Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Elsie with the Travel and Tourism Research Association. For today's webinar, Don't Let Your Audiences Go Stale, presented by our TTRA November Partner of the Month, MMGY Global. MMGY is one of the world's leading integrated marketing companies specializing in travel, tourism, and hospitality industries. Throughout this webinar, MMGY Senior Data Analyst Lauren Tichy and Associate Director of Strategic Planning Erin Carlson will talk about how we use audience segments to expand your reach, drive new customers, and tailor your creative messaging. Friendly reminder that we are using Zoom as this webinar platform, so please drop your questions into the Q&A, which we will discuss at the end of our webinar. We will try to get to as many of these questions as we can at the end of the session. I will now hand this over to Lauren and Erin. Thank you both.
Great, thank you. And thanks to everyone who took time out of their afternoon or morning today to come and listen into this. We know this time of year is really hectic as a lot of people are closing out a lot of projects and tasks before the end of the year. And that webinars can fall a little lower on the list. So thanks for joining with us. We hope you get a lot of information out of today. And as Elsie mentioned, we're going to be talking through a few items. First, Lauren's going to be talking about how to best identify your best target audiences and tap into those decision-making styles. And then towards the end, I'm going to speak a little bit about how we utilize some of those key data points and what we know about our target audiences to better decipher how we should talk to them from a messaging standpoint at different phases of the funnel. And then at the end, we will have Q&A, but feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go through. With that,
Awesome.
I'll kick it to Lauren.
Well, thanks so much, Erin. I appreciate it. So today, I just want to kind of reshape everybody's minds a little bit. So we're going to be kind of talking about the concept of moving from simply selecting an audience to something where we're driving performance with the concept of behavior influencing instead. So during our time, we're going to address how typical digital audiences that exist for usage within DSPs are commonly geared towards correlative performance as opposed to causal, and that these audiences can often miss the mark for what prospecting campaigns are actively looking to achieve. So utilizing an audience that is intended to influence the behavior of individuals will actually produce more opportunity for new customers to enter your marketing funnel. And then it will also better align your digital efforts with your organizational objectives, rather than just simply seeing high performance on a last touch basis, which is what we commonly see with these kind of audience or these algorithmically driven audiences. So for the travel industry specifically, we aren't simply looking to select segments that perform well and hope that we are going to be driving the type of lower funnel conversion that ladders up to our business objective as a result. We need to really be thinking critically about the type of individuals that fall into that segment and what makes them uniquely tied to our efforts, or what makes them ideal customers for our brand or our destination. I want to present to you the challenge that targeting the right audience is only going to be half the battle of our marketing efforts, and influencing their behavior and driving true incremental performance is going to be much harder and requires a deep understanding of travelers' human behavior. Specifically, want to call out the word human here. We're going to be speaking to humans throughout the entirety of our audience journey, and we want to make sure that we're not just thinking about them as demographic data points or buckets of individuals that fall within these segments. Here at MMGY, we look to build our segments specifically around travel behaviors, as well as their interests and activities that best align with our clients' organizational goals. I want to introduce to you a quote that many of you have likely seen before. This comes from John Wanamaker. He said, "Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted, and the trouble is that I don't know which half." Seems fairly relevant. If this is something that you feel applies to you, go ahead and kind of throw a thumbs up in the chat, or maybe a reaction here. It's definitely something that I find relevant now, even today. And it's something that's strikingly similar to our problem of changing our mindset from audience targeting to behavior influencing. Wanamaker himself actually said this right at the turn of the 20th century, and we're actively still trying to figure out how we can best utilize our marketing efforts and ensure that we're spending efficiently today. To better explain this, let's take a look at the brief history of marketing and advertising and measurement. So starting around 5,000 years ago, we can see evidence as early as from even the ancient Egyptians of shop owners utilizing some flyers and coupons just to help drive business into their store. And they could measure this effectiveness through a physical, tangible piece of that marketing material actually coming back to them. kind of villagers or townspeople coming in with that flyer themselves and saying, hey, I saw this, and then wanting to drive business to them. Over the next 5,000 years, we didn't really see a whole lot of advancement in terms of attribution for our efforts until really into the late 20th and then early 21st centuries, where then we got a whole slew of new technologies, algorithms, and then measurement tools that reshaped our landscape entirely. Some of these new platforms like Google Analytics, Google's acquisition of DoubleClick, cookie development and proliferation, all accelerated the growth of this digital marketing and attribution all the way up through the 2010s, and then really up until about 2016 and 2017. And currently, alongside that, our audience creation algorithms had launched with these advancements. However, following in 2016, we started to see another shift in measurement alongside those. Right at 2017, we see the introduction of Safari ITP, and then that started to dilute our attribution data, and it became less and less visible as consumer privacy took kind of the forefront of everything that we do on the internet and how we interact with marketing materials. As a result, conversion and attribution to touchpoints outside of last click became even more complicated to tie back to our marketing campaigns, and the effort that we feel as marketers to try to get to that root customer is even harder to achieve. We continued to see this trend continue all the way up until now, with even more and more privacy implementations continuing to dilute that quality of attribution and ultimately leading to more sweeping regulatory changes. And we're, of course, expecting this to continue into the next few years as consumer privacy has continued to be at the utmost importance. And then we see legislation making its way through several states, and then even into the federal level, likely in the coming years, starting in 2026. That being said, all the technology that's been developed around audience creation is still available, and the algorithms that supply these audiences to buying platforms continue to serve up appealing choices for our marketing campaigns, but are inherently still tied to last touch and attribution. So this introduces a bit of a flaw in how we grade the performance of these audiences overall when we know that we're not able to successfully measure that attribution. That being said, despite kind of our limited window of truly accurate attribution, we know that this performance is still occurring, even if nobody can hear the sound that it's making outside of our final touch points. Just to hammer this home and return to our Wanamaker quote, we're still asking the same question, despite all of the advancement that we've seen. Without being able to be present for the proverbial tree falling in the forest, how can we make meaningful impact in the battle against wasting effort? This is even more mystified for those of you who represent destination marketing organizations, where the traditional point of conversion isn't really there. We don't have cash registers to point to and pinpoint that attribution back to, and we're looking at a lot more esoteric and intangible kind of point of conversion. I want to call out a further piece of evidence here as well to kind of contextualize where these audience algorithms are going to be taking us. Highlighted here, we have a very, very specific segment and a DSP. This is DV360, and it's aimed at kind of helping you reach college-bound Gen Z individuals, which feels like a very specific type of person and somebody that we would want to uniquely message to in our efforts. From this, we get a couple of basic pieces of information. We get the segment ID. We know that LiveRamp is the provider, and we know that it's going to cost us $1.25 at a CPM to activate against this segment. And then we also tend to get a few basic pieces of demographic information. Most notably, if we dig into these details, we start to see that there's a relatively even split in gender, and then we also see a slightly evenly distributed age profile. But that strikes us as odd, and it should raise some red flags for those of you. Why are we seeing segment or age segments outside of 18 to 24 in this audience? We really should only be seeing 18 to 24 and maybe a little bit of that next age segment up. Instead, we're actually seeing the majority of the individuals within this segment fall well above that. So we know that the demographic attributes that are tied to these segments is slightly flawed. And really, we're not getting a lot of contextual detail about these individuals at all, what kind of behaviors or what makes them human that is going to be visible within a platform like this. And then what we do get is inherently going to be misleading. We clearly need to be looking at a solution beyond that of just these demographic data points. And so that really presents us with an opportunity, both as marketers and as travelers, and the travelers that we market to. I want to call out that this slide is kind of especially important to me. This is one of my favorite movies. If you recognize it as Castaway, then you'd be correct. And this is both in the very beginning of the movie and at the very, very end, as Tom Hanks kind of decides what roads are going to take him where in his life after the events of the movie. I don't want to spoil anything in the plot. However, and I don't want to say that we have quite as dramatic a decision to make as Tom Hanks's character does in this moment, but we do need to recognize that there is a huge emotional component to the decision that is being made for those that we market to. Travelers aren't making these decisions on where they're going to go or where they're going to plan their next trip to simply because they fall into these buckets of data points. They're making them because they are human and because they're drawn to the behaviors and the activities that they can experience when they're in those destinations or traveling with those brands. This gives us the opportunity to tap into behavioral and cognitive strategies to guide them in that process as they travel to their next destination. Here are a couple of examples of these kind of decision sciences and cognitive strategies that we've applied here at MMGY. These are sort of individual strategies, and Aaron will kind of go into better detail as we get into the later stages of the presentation on how we can utilize these. But they're targeted for influencing human behavior, and we like to apply these strategies specific to our messaging. At MMGY, we've been pondering the dichotomy between audience selection based on performance and driving true incrementality through behavior influencing. For example, we can provide clear benefits, offer choice, and we can build trust and appeal to identity with these kind of sciences. These are all tools that can help us encourage travelers to make these emotive choices and develop prospects that are going to convert for years down the line, and not only target at just the base of that conversion funnel that we're ultimately going to see dry out. When we utilize those audiences like we see in DSP and DSPs that are not behaviorally based, we start to see that conversion funnel in the lowest point ends up being depleted out over time. And so Aaron is going to give us a couple of deeper examples of this, as I mentioned earlier, later for our messaging alignment discussion. But I want to also take the opportunity to kind of introduce a tool that we've developed here at MMGY to help combat this. This is MMGY Trips. It's our in-house audience solution, and it's built off our travel intelligence models. From these models, we're able to leverage behavior and travel intention to drive incrementality and to better reach prospective travelers. Within these 36 segments, we've been able to identify unique cuts of the American traveler that better align with destination and travel brands' needs and will help produce the incrementality that we seek from our prospecting efforts. At the end of our discussion, we'll speak more on how trip segments can be used, but before we'll need to tackle that other problem that I mentioned, messaging alignment. And I'll pass it over to Aaron now to share more on that.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. So as Lauren works a lot in the data strategy component of MMGY, I tend to play more in the comms planning and creative strategy component at MMGY. So kind of bridging that art and science of deciphering the data and aligning it with actionable things that we can do in the creative messaging and how we speak and talk to the travelers that we're trying to target. So I know one challenge that we often have as marketers is knowing knowing how we truly understand enough about our target audience to differentiate how we speak to them along each phase of the decision-making journey. As marketers, we often come across kind of two different sides of the coin. One, as Lauren mentioned, you may only know high-level demographic information about who you're trying to reach, whether this is a new audience that you're tapping into, an opportunity area that has been seen for the brand and is maybe not an audience that you've spent a lot of time with yet, or just haven't been able to invest in the information to learn more about them. Or on the other side of the coin, you've invested that information, you know a lot about your audience, but not quite sure where and how to tap into some of those decision-making strategies that Lauren had outlined to determine how you can truly differentiate those data points to make sure the messaging aligns specifically to their influences and motivators. So this is where I come in to show a few examples using two of our trips audience profiles. But before I tap into those examples, I just want to kind of set the stage and go through. I'm going to talk to this as it relates to a very basic kind of media funnel. Over on the left-hand side is where I have the messaging purpose at a very high level that we tend to do, that we tend to think about in terms of how we want to talk about or talk to the different audiences and what we want them to do or feel or think or believe at different phases of the funnel. So that in that inspire phase, we're introducing and inspiring them. We really want our message and how we talk to them to encourage them to see themselves in this place, whether it's in the destination, at the attraction, in the hotel that we're talking about, whatever it is that we're marketing, really seeing themselves there. In that engage kind of mid-funnel level, this is the influence and attract phase of it. This is where we're really wanting to connect our prospective audiences with experiences and interests that align, with the motivators that we know about them. And then that convert phase, creating that sense of urgency to take action. And as Lauren mentioned, that action can mean different things, whether it's booking, lead generation, signing up for, a download of some sort. But then on the other side, there's certain things that we want our messaging to do, but we need to know certain aspects about our audience before we can really make the messaging actionable, to meet the needs. In the inspire phase, we need to know what and who inspires them and engage what interests and activities do they enjoy, maybe even who they enjoy doing those activities with, how many trips they tend to take in the year, how they're thinking about prioritizing those different activities and trips throughout their travel planning process. And then in the convert phase, what are some of those final motivators that they come into play when it comes to making a purchase decision? What are some of those barriers that they may have to book, etc.? And so going back to what Lauren had shared related to these individual strategies, to outline kind of different how people make decisions, I'm going to give through a few examples as we walk through this today. But as Lauren had said at MMGY, whenever we're thinking about the different audiences, we like to correlate at different phases of the funnel. There's different strategies that align to the different audiences based on what we know about them. So this is where I'm going to give examples using two of our TRIPS audience profiles that maybe at face value or name value, they may seem fairly similar. We know by their name, they're outdoor travelers. They like spending time in the outdoors. We may assume that the active outdoor traveler maybe likes more adventurous, types of outdoor activities, while the passive is maybe more of those like leisurely outdoor activities. And so, taking a look at the names, I don't know a whole lot about them aside that they like and travel for the outdoors. And then if I look a little further and keep it at a very top line demographic standpoint, if I'm looking at the age distribution and the household income distribution, it also looks fairly the same. If this is the information I know and understand about my audience, I may lead myself to message to these two audience segments in a similar way, based on the information I have here. But that doesn't really help me understand how I can inspire them to see themselves in this place. I don't quite understand what and who inspires them by that basic information. This is when I want to tap into some of the data points that we've included in our TRIPS audience profiles, that really help kind of outline a little bit more about this audience, how they see themselves, what they believe, what are some of the things that they value. And as I dig into these data points more, as I can see on the left, the active outdoor traveler and both the passive outdoor traveler on the right, they both value being informed, but in slightly different ways. For the active outdoor traveler wants to be informed through avenues of self-improvement, such as challenging themselves in ways they can learn new skills. The passive outdoor traveler is much more sociable and outgoing. They want to do things, they want to be informed about how they can impact their community, their friends, their family, and really bring people together. So if I go back to these, the strategies for decision making that Lauren had shared, there's two that I've identified here that make sense for this particular audience in terms of how I want to inspire them to see themselves here. One is the use of storytelling, and the second is to appeal to their identity and belonging as outdoor enthusiasts, as people who like to spend time in the outdoors. An example of how I may encourage our creative team to think about how we inspire these two audience segments to see themselves, either in a destination or at a lodging or theme park option. When we think about using storytelling for the active outdoor traveler, I would encourage us to tell a story about how challenging themselves leads to self-improvement with the brand as the background. So really kind of selling a little bit more on that inspirational or aspirational point of view that taps into what I know about motivates them in terms of that self-improvement and challenge. From a passive outdoor traveler standpoint, I would encourage us to tell a story about how taking time with their community makes life better, again, with the brand as the background. Knowing that we want to inspire them to see themselves in a certain place, it is, again, tapping into that aspirational sense about what motivates them. And then in the appeal to identity and belonging strategy, we may also do a test of messaging that kind of, for the active outdoor traveler, appeals to their more adventurous side and how they want to learn new skills in life, and that's something that they really value. While the passive outdoor traveler, again, wanting to appeal to their identity of being a person that brings people together and how they're very sociable in that nature. So moving on to the middle phase of the funnel. So again, our goal here is to influence and attract. We want to connect them with experiences that align with their interests and motivators. And so that leads me to look into what are some of the data points that I know to understand what interests and activities do they enjoy, who do they enjoy them with, and think about how we can align our messaging and such. Again, taking a look at some additional data points that are included in our trips profile reports. There's a few pieces here, related to types of vacations, who they like to travel with, what are some of the activity types that they like to do, and what are some of those factors influencing their choice of destination. And if I took a look at these data points and if I had to summarize it in one sentence for each of these, I would say that active outdoor travelers tend to look for beautiful scenery, beautiful places that they can tap into, and that's something that really influences them. They like sightseeing, visiting beach and coastal destinations, those country escapes that kind of get them out and about and seeing the beautiful space around them. And they're also really influenced for the choice of destination related to just the sights and attractions that they can see. And then on the other side, if I look at the passive outdoor traveler, we see road trips really high on their list, cruise, and action and adventure and theme park. A lot of those have a lot of variety in there. And then if we go down to the factors influencing choice of destination, we see at the top of their list here is the cost and value for the money. So this really lends me to paint the narrative around this audience wants to go to a place where they can have a variety of experiences because to them that makes it a good value. So again, I want to take a look at the decision-making strategies here and outline what are some of these based on that information, what I've learned about the audience that we can tap into to influence their behavior. One, providing clear benefits. So, how we can benefit them, offer choice with defaults. What are the choices we can provide to help make the travel planning part of the journey easy? And then third, providing informational framing. So comparing it to something else that they may see, because I also know that these travelers are considering multiple types of trips at any given time. Just because they are an outdoor traveler doesn't mean all of their trips that they're planning over the course of the next year are going to be outdoor based. They could, as we saw on the previous slide, they could also be considering cruises, city-based experiences, etc. So wanting to kind of provide some framing there around so we can encourage them to take maybe an outdoor trip if that is our goal. So an example here of how I would guide our team to message them in terms of influencing, their and attracting their behavior. Going back to what I know about the passive outdoor traveler seeking variety, I really want to lead forth with a strategy that offers choice with defaults. I want to provide some seemingly custom itineraries that help them pack the most into their trip. This does a few things for them. It helps position the brand as a resource to help them get the most out of their trip, which we already know that they value based on what we've learned about the audience. It also gives them something really easy to tap into and feel good about the decisions that they're making because they're feeling informed along the way. For both of these audiences, it's providing clear benefits is something that is easy to do at this phase of the funnel. We know that for the active outdoor traveler, a benefit they see is being able to get out and explore, beautiful surroundings. And so our messaging, we really want to highlight the value they get by surrounding themselves in this beautiful place and really tapping into that interest of theirs. Where the passive outdoor traveler, one of the benefits that they receive is highlighting the value they get by being highly active with their own time. People, they save up time for the vacations that they take. And so for this group, knowing that they can pack the most into a trip and really highlighting the best ways for them to do that, or just encouraging them to do so makes them feel good about their decisions. And then lastly, for the active outdoor traveler, knowing that this audience is considering multiple vacations at any point in time in the year, if our goal is to encourage them to take a more outdoor centric vacation with a brand, let's say a camping brand, for example, some of the things that I may do is frame the juxtaposition of the beauty of the places that they're going to be while camping to their daily life, or maybe other vacation experiences that I know they may be considering. So doing some of that kind of a play of the visual differences between those, maybe from an audio standpoint, a play on some of the different audio things that they may be hearing, to create kind of that informational framing to guide them to make that more relaxed decision. And then lastly, in the conversion phase, we want them to come to action. And so, as I mentioned before, I want to tap into some of the data points that I can really help me understand what are some of the barriers they have to book, what are the final motivators that are really guiding them to make that final decision. And I know for many of more destination brands, a lot of those like that booking piece isn't necessarily happening on the destination website, but is maybe happening with other partners in the destination. And so this is where I always encourage more of our destination clients to kind of tap into and work with their partners on the ground and provide them the information that they know about their audience and who we're trying to attract to the area, to guide maybe or suggest promotional strategies. So again, looking at our active outdoor traveler versus the passive outdoor traveler and some of those purchase influencers that they have, if I look at this at face value, there's a lot in here that's the same. This is where they kind of start to meld together. And so maybe some of my messaging strategy is going to be very similar in nature. But there's two areas where they differentiate. And this is where I would suggest testing some promotional strategy differences between these two audiences. For the active outdoor traveler, this is where, if you look down at the very bottom of what I have on the slide here on the left, the use of discount codes or coupons. This particular traveler, they're very interested in using discount codes or coupons. It is something that influences their decision to make a purchase over another brand if they have the ability to do so. While the passive outdoor traveler, if we look at the second bullet point in that section on the bottom, they want to buy the premium version of products. So, they're more likely to be looking for values in terms of upselling, things like that. So again, going back to these decision-making strategies, utilizing scarcity and urgency definitely taps into this phase of the funnel for a lot of audiences that you will interact with. And then offering tangible incentives. And this is where I mentioned those kind of differentiators between the two. In this area, as we can see on this slide, is where I would suggest kind of testing some different promotional strategies to see if you can better convert these audiences. At the top line for both the active outdoor traveler and passive outdoor traveler, utilizing that scarcity and urgency in our message, since I saw so many similarities between these two audiences, I would feel comfortable recommending doing a more of a blanketed kind of like countdown or last chance messaging if there was a certain kind of deal, or, we didn't want them to miss out on booking a vacation in advance to get the best, if going back to the camping example, if we wanted for them to get the best camp spots available at our campground, etc., to kind of create that sense of urgency. But where I would differentiate is how we offer those tangible incentives they may tap into. For the active outdoor traveler, I mentioned that they're very motivated by coupon codes and discounts. So this is where I would work if I was a destination, potentially working with a hotel partner and encouraging them to consider incentivizing during key times of year where they need to increase occupancy with a discount or promotional code that we could include in our messaging. And then with the passive outdoor traveler, incentivizing with that upgrade or a more premium access to an experience. Providing something maybe more of a mid or high tail offer, so they can really kind of, add value to their trip, as we know that that's something in the previous phases of the journey that this particular traveler finds a lot of influence in. So those are just some examples of different components of how we utilize key data points from our trips audience profiles that Lauren had mentioned before. And some of the screenshots that I pulled in talking through those examples were just little aspects of the profile reports that are included. We do have 36 kind of off-the-shelf audiences available for download on our website that you can access and tap into some of those same data points as mentioned before. But I did want to share with you as well what those profile reports look like, because I only shared kind of some components of those. But in the profile reports for all of the 36 audiences, it includes that demographic and about this audience information, as well as a nice executive summary write-up with some top-line identifiers of that audience, along with media consumption habits, where they spend their time daily on media. What are some of those genres that they do that media teams can really tap into and hone in on? And so you can think about not just how we're messaging to them differently, but where maybe as well. And then those different kind of travel behavior activities in terms of what are some other destinations within the US and international destinations that they have shown interest in for traveling in the next few years. All right. So with that, we do have a few kind of Q&A questions that we've outlined in here, as they're questions that we tend to get when we talk about this particular topic. One of this was, how do you find more about these TRIPS audience profiles? We do have them available on the website for download, where you can take a look at them and see those data points that I had mentioned. I'll have a URL at the final end of the screen, or you can always email us at trips@mmgyglobal.com and ask us any questions about any of those as well.
Yeah, so I can take this one. So what is the cost to use MMGY's TRIPS audiences, and where can I activate against them? So with this, we actually have a flat rate of $1.25 CPM, and then these are going to be available really within any major DSP, so DV360, the Trade Desk, and plenty others. As Aaron mentioned, you can always email us at trips@mmgyglobal.com, and then we're able to kind of work with you on a case-by-case basis if your DSP is not the DSP that you favor using is not something that is more commonly used. With that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the travel behaviors that we view as most important when we've identified these TRIPS audiences. And so the answer for this is really a huge variety. We've looked at a bunch of different modeled behaviors and activities. And from TRIPS, I have an example of our all-inclusive beacher audience, where we looked at both beach and waterfront travel, but we also looked at resort travelers and even layered in some propensity for fine dining and beverages, nightlife, and water sport activities to really get at kind of the activities that you would do while you were traveling to an all-inclusive resort if you were to fall into that segment.
And a question I often get is, how do we determine those decision-making styles for each of the audience? And I know I talked through a few examples of that, and I mentioned this is kind of where a little bit of that science and art comes together. But often how I approach that is similar to what I talked about through those examples. I'll take a look at the data points and look at where there may be key differences and see if I'm seeing kind of a correlating theme throughout that would help me summarize it in one sentence. Similar like I did with the passive and outdoor example, when I talked about, one of the active outdoors being influenced by beautiful scenery, where the other one's more of that variety and value. Even though there was some similarities in the data points in there, being able to draw the kind of those two differences from that information and then align those with how we can provide clear benefits to them through those, and taking a look back at that strategy sheet. So now we want to open up to any questions that are thrown in the Q&A area.
Looks like we've got one from Matt here. It says, your info and data points seem to be targeting the individual traveler. What about corporate groups? Do you also have insights on how to best engage corporate planners for site selections and options? Yeah, so to kind of think about this one, I would say that these are largely going to be targeted at leisure groups or leisure travelers, but we do have some models that are in store for the future within TRIPS specifically, where we're looking at kind of developing those. So in a later date, we'll probably have some more audiences that will come out. But as far as the messaging component, Aaron, I guess, would you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think when we think about from a like a groups or business travel standpoint, a lot of times these individuals, they're travelers as well, and they're thinking about the attendees that they're needing to influence in those destinations. So I think even understanding who are the attendees that they're coming to and what kind of traveling segment they may be part of can help kind of tap into in a little bit of an indirect way some of the different motivators that you may want to provide them messaging around as they're thinking about how they may encourage attendees to attend their event.
Okay, it looks like we've got another one from Kate. It says, great info. For the list of strategies you shared, are there some that generally fall into the same funnel stages, or can they be used interchangeably throughout the funnel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer this first, and Lauren, you can add in anything more. I do find that there's some that tend to come up more frequently in different phases of the funnel, particularly the conversion phase, or that lower funnel phase. There's some of those that just are more strongly associated to the behaviors that we want to influence at that area. Where I see there being a little bit of swap or some gray area, if you will, is more in that inspire and engage phase where we may see the same kind of strategy show up for both. It's just maybe tapping into what we know about the audience in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and to kind of echo off that, I would definitely say that there are going to be some that are definitely more targeted at upper funnel. So, appealing to emotions and using storytelling, I would definitely see those falling at the inspire phase for sure. Maybe more applicable there than at the lower funnel phases. Awesome. I guess looking to see if there's any other questions, but I don't see any other ones in the chat. Does anybody else have any other questions for us while we have some time? We have one from John. It says, how can I ask for additional audiences? I guess just kind of clarifying for that in terms of, are you asking around just how many more can we push outside of the 36 that we have available now? Or are you looking for just like how can we push multiple audiences at once? Right. So at this moment, yeah, there are just the 36 that are available. We are working to get some more in that list in the future. And so when those are available, you'll see industry-wide announcements from MMGY as well.
Yeah, I will say if there's any that you think would provide value, feel free to send us an email at thetrips@mmgyglobal.com. We are constantly brainstorming around different audience segments that we may want to consider. So if you have any ideas, feel free to send them our way. We want to make these available to the industry. So.
Awesome. Well, and oh, I guess I just noticed this. It looks like, John, you asked a follow-up about custom work from the team. I guess we have some other solutions for that if it's more client specific. So MMGY Terminal may be a product that may be something that's of interest to you, and we could definitely speak more on that another time. But again, as Aaron mentioned, feel free to send us an email through the Trips alias, and we're happy to respond and provide additional context. But yeah, thank you everybody for your time, and we certainly appreciate all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you all to everyone who attended. Lauren and Aaron, thank you both so much. I'll go ahead and give this notice now. If we have any more questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. But if you have any further questions, you're always welcome to reach out. TTRA members will receive free access to this recording in the next few days, and non-members will be able to purchase this recording for a small fee. Thank you all again and have a wonderful day.
Thanks everyone, and good luck with your end of year projects.
Same to you. Thank you.